9 years ago, when I got elected as mayor of Lancaster, Lancaster is a very conservative Republican area. I like to call myself a California Republican. You know what that is? We actually read books. You know, it's different than the rest of the country. But I actually fell into the party line that climate change was simply a conspiracy to let other countries compete, you know, to really synthesize what I'd been taught. And then I get elected mayor, and I meet Bill Gross of Idea Lab, and he is just starting to build a thermal unit, you know, where they have the mirrors focus on the right. And it was revolutionary at the time because he could bring it down to 14 cents a kilowatt. And with subsidies, that made sense. And so I got to have lunch with him, and he says, no, climate change really is real. And, you know, and I started reading, and I started studying it. And I realized that my grandchildren were probably not going to survive the way things were going. And it's very easy for us now to lose sight of that. You know, when the new head of the EPA is 10 years ago using the same party line. One time Showtime did a special on it, and I got to debate the guy, Jim Jones, who was with Heritage Foundation, who goes around telling everybody that climate change is a hoax. I got to debate him. It was a lot of fun because he ends up standing up threatening to kick my ass, you know? And he's screaming at me, you know. And the reason he did that is because you know, it's like anything else. I researched him. He used to work for the tobacco industry, and he went all over the country talking to legislatures saying secondhand smoke was totally safe, you know. And there wasn't enough science yet for us to know. It was this exact same party line. And not only was it the exact same party line, it was the exact same person spreading it. But it's important for us to recognize, because we really are on our own now, is that's what's coming. The only difference is we can't see it. When that thing, if it was an asteroid facing us, what would happen? The species would cease to exist. Other species would continue on. But that's what we're facing, the annihilation of the species. The last time the oceans were this warm, there were alligators in Canada. It just hasn't caught up with it yet. You know, there's a lot of debate out there. Can we turn it back? You know, can we save it? If we did everything right. And so what do? We elect that guy in Washington. And my party elected him. That's what's, you know, so now what I'm hearing though is there's pretty much a recognition, even in Republican circles, that there's a problem. And they're still balancing, is it man-made? But you know, they don't even say that very loud anymore. You know, we're now at the point that you're starting to look foolish when you do that, when you look at the rise of temperatures every year. In my city, we're now hitting summers at 120 degrees. What does that mean? That means my homeless population is now life-threatening on those days. And we have to send out law enforcement to pass out water. You know, that we have deaths as a result of it. And that's, how many, 2.5 hours northeast of here. But the argument that I hear a lot is, well, okay, but it should be fair. What about China and India? We shouldn't do anything until they do. Well, it depends on how you define fairness. Any way you look at it, you know, we're dumping 20% of the garbage in the air is coming from us. If you were to look at it temporally, over a stretch of time, 80% of what's in that air we put there. That argument just doesn't hold water. It's ethically, morally, and just from a point of survival, incumbent upon us to do something about it. And I know I'm kind of talking to the choir here because you are doing something about it. We're just not doing it fast enough. In the course of learning about this and starting on this journey, it turned out the biggest obstacle were the power companies. And I don't call them by name anymore because they quit inviting me to these things. It turns out they're the ones that pay for them. And we see that a lot. We see that a lot. A lot of the nonprofits that we're relying on to protect us are funded by the oil industry. And that's why I think they're not as effective as they should be. But it became quickly apparent to me that if we were going to really be effective, we had to take the power back from Edison. And not because they were bad people, but because they're very slow. You know, they're very bureaucratic. They have a way of doing things that's profitable. And you know, in those old companies, you don't get anywhere by taking risk. All you got to do is keep it going, you know, just no bumps. Well, and then you run into Lancaster, and we want you to take all kinds of risks. In fact, when I first got interviewed by some business magazine, and they said, well, what about the risk you're exposing the city to? That was the first time the word risk came into play. First time I thought about it. You know, it just seemed so obvious to me that these are the things you need to do. Maybe it was too simplistic. Maybe I was just lucky. But boy, were we lucky. You know, the need for us to act, those pictures are today. Actually, they were 8 years ago. This is the longest fence in the history of the world. And it's between Bangladesh and India. And it's there for a very good reason. Bangladesh is on an alluvial plain. It will cease to exist. The government of India knows that. What do you do with 156 million people? You know, look at the problems we're having with, actually, we don't have a problem, but we like to say we do. But 156 million more people is economic ruin. So they built the largest fence in the history of the world. That's what's coming at us. And that's if we do everything right today. So in Lancaster, I just decided we were going to be the first net zero city, meaning we will produce more electricity from the sun than we use. And I think we're there now, aren't we? This year we hit there. We produce more electricity than we use. And that's one of the poorest cities in the state. We were at 21% unemployment when I started. We had the highest crime rate in LA County when I started for the 80-some cities. And what we discovered was when you start down this path, everything changes. You know, we now have one of the lower crime rates in the county. We now have a 4.9% unemployment. Everything changes when you start taking on something as monstrous as becoming the first net zero city. When you have no money, you have the highest dropout rate in the county. You have the highest mortality rate from preventable diseases. And what I'm saying to you is we were the last place on earth you should have seen this happen. And it happened simply because about 20 people on city staff believed. They believed we could do something about it. And more importantly, they recognized we had to create a template for the rest of the country to follow, because nobody was doing it. You know, the cities that could do it tend to be more bureaucratic than is tolerable for this level of change. You know, the only one that I found that's really embraced it to an extent that they're making incredible progress is San Francisco. You know, they got some really interesting people there. San Diego, interestingly enough, is a city that's embraced changing the world. So you got all of these people who recognize what they're doing is far more important than how we bill electricity. You know, what we're talking about here today is not just changing the business model for delivering electricity. It's something much bigger than that. And it's amazing to us how much money is into it. We thought we were going to lose money. Instead, how much money you can make. Everything has become valuable. I mean, sewage is now, really valuable. And as you get into this, you realize just the different ways there are for profitability. And we were the last place on the earth that I think anybody would have expected it. One of the things that started it was I told Edison, I said, look, I'd like to change our power, our light poles to LED. It was a simple request. It was 8 years ago, but, not a big deal. Just let's move them to LED. And I got this vice president guy sitting there telling me, well, you have to do all kinds of testing. It'll take several years, and obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. I go, what? I did it at the house without any of that trouble, right? And, a little bit of him was right, and a little of me was right. But the frustration was so great that what we did is we bought the poles, bought all of the poles. And wow, the scams people got going against cities. It's truly amazing. $90-some a pole in maintenance, right? Well, it was easy to do the math. I could put all new lights in. I could put a centralized control for all those lights. I'm going to put on a light show as soon as at the end of the year, we'll have them all switched out. And I'm going to have a light show you can see from space. It'd be really cool. But you can do other things with centralized control. In a time of an emergency, you can do paths to get out, how to get out of the neighborhood. You light up exits. You can make a street go dark if you're doing a police operation. You can dim when nobody's on the street. You do all kinds of things for 1/10 the cost. It's the money you make on these things that you don't have to spend just by becoming sustainable is nobody was prepared for. Certainly we weren't. We thought it was going to be all a negative balance. We didn't know there was going to be such a positive inflow coming from it. And we'll get to that in a second. But there's some downsides. You got to have fields of these things. And we do. The great thing about Lancaster is we've got miles and miles of disturbed land because it used to all be alfalfa fields. And the water table was too deep to pump the water anymore. So now we can put whatever we want out there without any ecological problems. But how we started was we were the first city that all of our municipal buildings, 97%, and all of our schools, all of it is alternative energy now. It's all solar panels. 97% of the electricity is that. But we learned a lot of lessons, and you want to learn these for those of you who haven't done it yet, is it's volatile. It changes every day. What makes perfect sense today, you're going to regret tomorrow to a certain extent. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't move, because what we're paying for that electricity is 12 cents a kilowatt. That was the best deal in the world when we did it, right? 12 cents, man, that's 10 cents less. It's, the city manager there, he was a genius for doing that.
For 6 months.
And then the cost of making solar panels just collapsed. It's so much cheaper now, but we're already locked in. But that's okay. It's okay. Because at the end of the day, remember the goal. And we are out of time. But you develop other ideas. One of the things, I ended up going to China a lot because there was a company there called BYD, and Build Your Dreams. And what they do is they have a different type of battery. It's an iron phosphate battery. And if you have a battery in your phone, they made it. The world's largest battery maker. And they're getting into transportation and different things like that. And they wanted to come start BYD America. So everybody is trying to get them to come to their city. Now, why would they come to Lancaster? We still don't know. But they knew they'd be a partner with us. And how they knew that is, as I got to know them, that's the president of BYD America, Stella Lee. I called her up one day and I said, look, I'd like to have a meeting with you and KB Homes because I want you to make a house that's really affordable, that the average American can buy. You know, anybody can make a net zero house that takes no power off the grid. But at the time, it cost $1 million. I wanted one that the average American could buy. So we have this meeting down at KB Homes. That's the great thing about being mayor, I found, is you tell people to have a meeting, they come. You know, it was a new experience. And they're telling me it can't be done. Can't be done. So I said, okay, I'll waive building fees. And what else can I do to make you at least try to do this? And it turns out what it was time. They said, how long will it take to get permitted? So I looked at my watch. I said, how long do you want it to take? Because if you're willing to get rid of the bureaucratic nonsense, and all you have, what I found is you just have to be willing. You just have to make the decision that no, you don't get to do that anymore. You know, like an example of that was now, if you want to put solar on your house, it's over the counter. It takes 20 minutes. I was shocked to find out it used to take 6 months. 6 months, you know? Like, first of all, like my guys know what they're doing in regards to solar panels? Of course not. You know, it's crazy how we put bureaucracy in the way. But they did it. And 4 months later, we flipped the switch. And not only has that house now been functioning for 7 years without ever taking a kilowatt off the grid, it charges the car. I mean, how cool is that? That's what you're capable of doing when you just decide to do it. I mean, it's almost like a Tony Robbins, you know what I mean? Because I'm the one that's most surprised that this stuff is happening, but it truly is. So we get BYD to come and they open a bus company in Lancaster. And then what we find is when you take Chinese companies and American companies and put them together, Scott Page out of the University of Michigan has done the research on this. It's called functional diversity. What happens is truly amazing. Much better decisions, much better innovation. That bus there, normally when you have an articulated bus, it's for urban areas, you know, short runs, except when it's electric. That bus goes back and forth from Lancaster, 90 miles, every day without charging. How cool is that? Because by making this really long bus, you got lots of batteries. I mean, it's really simple stuff. It's not rocket science. More batteries, longer it lasts. Now we will become one of the largest truck producers in America up in Lancaster, because UPS, all of their delivery trucks will be electric now. Trash trucks, pretty soon, they're all going to be electric. Wouldn't you love not to hear that noise of those trash trucks? They're even quiet. You know, street sweepers. Anything with high torque, this is really the way you want to do it. Those things there, that's where you store the energy. You know, Aliso Canyon with the Porter Ranch, you know, the big gas leak. Horrible, horrible. I'm involved in that, and what those people had to endure is horrible. And there's no reason for it anymore. You know, you can store the energy that we make from alternative sources, store it overnight. The technology there, it's affordable, it's cheaper. You can build a power plant with those batteries that'll last 30 years for less than it costs to build a gas-powered power plant. And now, why you're all here and why we're here. I got in that fight with Edison. I tend to be a vindictive person. I try not to be. But I told staff, figure out a way to get us away from Edison. I don't want them to have that kind of power over us. And so they did. they found out about what they did in Marin County with this community choice thing. We had no idea what that was. We had no idea what it meant. The people that run this had very little experience with it. And now we had a 94% retention rate when we opened it up. Everybody's saving 4.6% of their electric bill when you average it out across the city. And they could save a lot more, but I want us to be the leader of the nation in sustainable cities and alternative energy use, and that takes money, and I don't want to charge the taxpayers one dime. So the money we save from the streetlights, which is huge, and the money we save on community choice, it's all going towards that. It doesn't go into the general fund. It goes into other innovative projects. And how long did it take us to do it? 2 years?
About
3 years? And I don't think we've had a hiccup. At least, let's put it this way. They probably had lots of hiccups, but it didn't get to the level of the mayor. You know, I never heard what they were. And I got reelected with 70% of the vote. I mean, how does that happen? Especially, you know, I'm not the most democratic guy in the world, you know? They like the results. They love seeing what is changing, that innovation really pays off. And so they're willing to put up with my personality, is really how we say it. I've promised them, not only have I promised them a 2% unemployment, but that there will come a day when we lower their taxes and have all of these things, because everything we do, I want a piece of it. You know, I went to China. That's how they do it in China. The government owns a piece of everything. So whenever we have some type of new technology, the first thing I ask is, what's the city's piece of the action? So now we're starting to generate income from all of this. And an example of it is this. We're going to flip our fleet to hydrogen cars. Part of the deal is, okay, they'll put in hydrogen power stations, but I want to be a hydrogen power gas station that sells it, right? That's the new wrinkle to it. All of this stuff is innovative, it's changing, it's really cool stuff, but it's also recognized there's a new model here. It has to pay for itself. And the only way we're going to do that is to just say, no, the city gets a piece of that. And I really recommend those of you who are making decisions for the city, don't be constrained by old models. They don't work. They certainly, and there's no reason why we have to be constrained by them. And believe me, the companies that we're working with prefer it. Because think about it. If the city has skin in the game, we don't tolerate anybody getting in the way, you know? I mean, you don't have some bureaucrat sitting behind a desk saying no just because it's easier to say no than it is yes. They love the idea. And this is how, if any mayors out there, well, tell your mayor. How you get the rest of the council to go along is when you go all over the world getting awards for being a sustainable city or this or that, don't you go. Send a councilman. You know, him and his wife get to go to Austria, get an award, and that's good for a year, sometimes a year and a half. You know? They're in my corner, but I never go. I mean, these two are the most right-wing Republicans you've ever met. And they're the biggest proponents of making Lancaster a sustainable city. But that's, you know, that's part of the reason. You know, I don't want to politicize this too much. But it's very easy. It's very easy. I mean, I wake up every morning and I'm a little distraught every morning when I hear the head of the EPA saying climate change doesn't exist. You know, I know Rick Perry. He's the last guy who should be the Department of Energy. Oh, nice guy, don't get me wrong, he's got a lot of great attributes. but that's probably not the best place for them, you know? And when I see them dismantling all that we're attempting to do on a national level, I get really discouraged. But then I remember, it doesn't really matter, because Trump doesn't issue building permits. I do. This world is going to be saved locally. And it's going to be saved by how we consume and how we discharge our waste. And that is a local decision. And we really don't need federal monies to do it. It'd be faster if we had it, but interestingly enough, it's a more profitable way to do things. It's shocking to me that you actually make a profit from it rather than it being a net cost. So, why are we here? A lot of you are making efforts to become a community choice aggregate. Some of you are doing JPAs, and I guess JPAs work some places. My approach to JPAs, when they come to me and want to do one, I go, okay, but I get to appoint a majority of the people. You know? I actually pulled that off once. You know? Because my biggest fear is just the bureaucracy of it. You know, the more layers you add, the more difficult it gets. We're now working with what cities?
San Jacinto, Hermosa Beach, and Pico Rivera.
And our goal is to do it any way you want to do it, but to get you there fast. This is what we can guarantee you. You'll be up and running in a year. You'll have your certification in 5 months. We're flexible as to how you do it, what you want us to do. But to us, it's getting you there quickly. Because once you get there, then you can buy totally green energy, totally alternative energy. And we're finding that how many people, what's the percentage opting into the?
Almost 2%.
I'm sorry?
Almost 2%, about 800, 900 accounts.
Is $10 more a month to be totally green. And we're an incredibly depressed economic area. The cities that have full employment, things of that nature, you're going to find it much higher. But one, it just takes the will to do it. I don't think anybody's going to regret it when you take back the power into your own hands. And unfortunately, we don't have any choice. We will either solve this now, or it's going to be too late. And we don't have one day to lose. The ocean is getting warm. There's nothing we can do to prevent it. We can only cap it. And it's a big if we can cap it. But that thing's coming at us. Make no mistake. Thank you.